If, when you were much younger, one of your dreams was to backpack through Europe, okay, or do some exploration of another country, live it at minimal budget, but explore the world. If you did that and you asked your group of buddies, and back in the day when you were younger, there were probably about 20 of them, hey, how many of you are keen that we check out Europe, we'll backpack, we'll go live in hostels and sleep on the beach or in tents and, take the train from one town to another or city to another and learn about life, you will find that probably all of them at some level will put up their hands. Okay? And of that entire group of 20 or 30, how many of them will be on the plane with you? You're lucky if there's one. Okay? And when you get to the other side in Europe or whichever country you decided to explore, and you end up at that hostel or tour for young tourists place, all right, you'll find there'll be maybe sometimes 1,000 people from all parts of the world who shared your vision. Now be wary of when you decide that you are now going on this path, that others say they will join you. Because what can happen is they can pull you down, or hopefully they pull you up. But if you want to go on a journey, be wary that many will say, yes, I will join you, but how honest are they? Or they're just grabbing off your energy. Very few people sometimes share the energy level you do. After you've been through such a process here for 2, 3 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, you are at a different energy level. Everyone wants to be wealthy, but very few people join you on the journey of that hard work. Or if you decide, I want to lose weight, very few people decide to join you on that journey. So as much as people are saying, yes, they will join you, you must not necessarily have to look over your shoulder all the time to see if they are with you. And what happens as well, given as well that you are vulnerable and sensitive, and you have just come out of this place, that you get pulled back, that your wounds get exposed. This is about you. In some cultures, they speak of liberation of the soul. And they say that as much as you endeavor to liberate your soul and you endeavor to help everyone else on the journey, it's you. It's you alone that has to make the journey. Yes, help others, share with others, give them the information. Also very important is not to become other people's rescuers. Never to take that absolute responsibility where you're carrying people on your shoulders. Let's talk about rescuing. I hope we're covering some of these things here, right? Okay. Let's talk about rescuing and responsibility. Okay? What we all do is we assume we take responsibility for the world. You have to take responsibility for everyone else. And how do we generally take responsibility for everyone in this world? You take on their problems and you endeavor to control their lives. And if you try to control people's lives, the only way you can control people's lives is if you resort to logic and rationality. What responsibility equates to, if I can just write it here, is we generally associate responsibility with control. And you can take responsibility for some of the people some of the time, but there's no guarantee you can take responsibility for all of the people all of the time. Because people don't want to be controlled. People don't want you to tell them how to live their lives. And if they categorically disagree on what you say, that means they have to decide in their minds who is right and who is wrong. And the nature of the mind is, I am right and therefore you are wrong. And then when you decide to take responsibility or rescue someone, you are going to be, if they disagree, they're going to be in a moment where you are wrong and I am right. And all our minds fight for who is right. We all argue for who is right. We all argue for our limitations. And we all argue for our worth. And as much as you feel or think that you are coming from a very responsible place, a very powerful place, a place of compassion, kindness, love, it doesn't matter not. Because the person has to be ready to meet you. And over the years, I've seen people who are in an absolute desperate space and place where they're completely down. And someone goes along and helps them, takes responsibility, so-called rescues them, pulls them up. You need to recognize the need that you can only help someone if they wish to be helped and to the extent that they wish to be helped. Many people, we're all fighting and arguing for who we are and what we are. And people see this as a judgment against who they are. And I've had fascinating cases where people will describe even ending up in a prison cell. And someone has gone and rescued them as such. And afterwards it was seen as a negative. Because I can sort myself out. I just called on you because of the fact that you were available. It's not your job to rescue others. Okay, I'm going to qualify this further, right? Let's start. What is true responsibility? True responsibility, I'm going to add the word true here, right? So it's true responsibility. Is not just control. It's also awareness. Okay? It's awareness. True responsibility is control plus awareness. So as I was saying, you can only control what's in your mind. And you can endeavor to control what's in another person's mind. So you have to apply logic and rationality. True responsibility, in its absolute sense, is responsibility for who? It's responsibility for yourself and everyone else on this planet. How then, may you ask, do I take responsibility for others rather than endeavoring to be accused of controlling them, manipulating them, as you use the word, conditioning them, or some might argue what, brainwashing them, all right? How then do you endeavor to shift? In order to fully take responsibility, the awareness aspect is fundamental. All right? How do you control a 10-year-old? You tell him what to do. If he's your son, or it's hopefully easier when he's 10. When he's 20 or 30, it's a different story. Why? Because when you told him what to do at 10, his mind hopefully listened to you. He recognized you as a figure of authority, and he said, okay, I will listen because you buy the chocolates in this house and the PlayStation and decide my budget. At 20, even though you may still be doing that generally, the problem is his mind has decided I can do things on my own. So it becomes very much more difficult to control that mind because it's thinking things that you haven't even thought of. It's seeing things, it's getting stimulated in this day and age by 10,000 different items on social media that you didn't even know existed. And therefore it's demanding something more. That is control, what you can control is literally 1% of life. You can't control 99% of what's out there. We've been playing with the aircon this morning because at one moment the weather was cold this morning, then it became warm, now it's getting cold again, then it's getting warm, we're not too sure. You cannot even control, as much as we change the environment in this room, you cannot change the environment on the outside. You have no clue what tomorrow will bring. We are completely unaware. And that demands the awareness of the infinite and the absolute that's out there. Control is easy. Politicians endeavor to control all the time. People in authority, teachers, parents endeavor to control. We resort to control because it's the easiest way to deal with the situation. Okay? And it reminds me of I think it was an American author called Thoreau, who describes trying to push a baby calf into a barn, all right? Trying to manipulate it, because it's an animal, right? So what he did is they tied a noose around its neck, and he pulled from the front, and his son pushed from the back. But this was a strong calf. And they pulled, but it held its ground. And they just couldn't get it in. That's control. And the baby calf is probably thinking to itself, these guys are trying to manipulate me, control me, condition me, probably want to make burgers out of me, all right? Has no choice, right? So it holds its ground. And at some point, Thoreau and his son rest, and they're like, we can't get this, we'll give it a break, we'll try and get this calf in later. His daughter comes along, and she holds out a finger and puts it into the cow's mouth, and it licks it, and she leads it into the barn.
Wow.
What was the difference? One was control, the other was awareness. Awareness of what? That all not animals, at some level, we all respond to love. Love is beyond control. Love is beyond logic. Love is beyond rationality of the mind. That's what it responded to. When we meet someone, when we want to tell them what to do, are they ready yet to hear you? Or do we have to meet them where they're at? And sometimes they can take weeks, months, years, lifetimes, some might argue, to shift. And you have to meet them at that point of awareness. We generally don't bring in awareness. What do I mean by awareness? It means witnessing, it's observing, it's being aware of the full extent of people and seeing them for what they are, rather than what you would like them to be. You and I come in with this is how you got to live life. And maybe, yes, you've been through a path, all right, of shift. Imagine Warren Buffett stood here, and said, hey, this is 10 things you need to do for achieving wealth. We might say, I don't have dollars to invest in the stock exchange. We'll come up with all kinds of excuses, right? Why? We argue for our mind, because we feel that will take us into a space that we don't want to. Awareness is seeing the full extent of what people are rather than what you would like them to be. And two, what they themselves may make themselves out to be. Recognize people will tell you, I want to be wealthy, I want to be sober, I want to be healthy, I want to be on that plane with you to Europe. But you've got to see them for what they are rather than what you would like them to be. And also thirdly, see people for what they are rather than what the whole world may make them out to be. And that's that level of awareness that we need to bring through. And I'm going to refer to a biblical example of awareness versus control. All right? So, in the Bible, there's a story of Jesus after the Last Supper chatting to Peter. Okay? And at some point, Jesus tells Peter, you will deny me 3 times. Was that an example of control or awareness? Awareness, observance, all right? And the level of intuition that came through was so powerful that he could be aware of the full spectrum of time and place, because it happened in a different time, in a time ahead, and in a different place to where they were. And a logical and rational Peter says, no ways, right? Because you are my Lord. I see you as, Jesus Christ, and all that he attributed. And most of us would endeavor to control the situation, given what what's going to happen, right? Yet, it brings up the concept of what I described of love again, of an awareness. And fascinatingly, most people in that predicament would control if you'll fight the situation, or you'll flight from that situation, or you just freeze up. Fascinatingly, Jesus didn't display any of these qualities. He was calm, cool, compassionate, kind, and loving. And what happened, if anything, who was more unaware in that situation was Peter, because when he did deny 3 times, he feels this absolute remorse and guilt. Fascinating in terms of his awareness then of himself, but he thought he would be able to control himself. But welcome to life. It throws at us crazy situations that you have no clue how to control. And that's the challenge. You have to actually allow yourself to be humble to all that life can offer. Be wary that life's going to throw at you some crazy curveballs. Someone's going to shoot you from the side. You never expected it. They didn't play by the rules of the game. Recognize, welcome to life, there are no rules. You and I make it up as we go along. The status quo, the societal rules that apply today will not apply tomorrow. The rules that applied in the past do not apply today. We live in a country where there was a hierarchy of race. You dare mention that now. You dared. But there is still a hierarchy of sorts, but we dare not say that. All right? And 10 years from now, they'll acknowledge the hierarchy that existed today, whatever we may call it. Because there always is. We are human beings. We dissect how people are. We analyze, we categorize, we quantify, we put it all in boxes and compartments, because that's how the mind works. We need to understand things. Got no time to look at the full spectrum and aware of people's behavior. But times like this demand that of us, where we see people for the full extent of what they are. And that brings in that whole awareness. And if you and I tap into that awareness, it allows us to become intuitive, become observant, become aware of the subtleties of human behavior. And you'll pick up on, one will even use the word energies and all these subtle things. Someone just shifts their eyes a bit and you recognize, wait a minute, something's just not right. But rather than trying to change it to fit your world, you see the world for what it is, you allow the world to be what it is, and lo and behold, it's not you trying to control the world, but you trying to control your mind and let the world be. And if you let the world be, and if you control the world, your mind, the world will be attracted to your mind, because we love energy that is calm, comfortable, safe, and secure. And that's going to be a journey. And that's where you need to have, you mentioned the words being lonely, isolated, poor support. This demands faith in your journey. That what you're endeavoring towards is strong, is resilient, is authentic with who you are, and in alignment with something more. Because why we give up on this journey is like someone walks along and says, hey, you want to do something, and it takes you back to your old days, old habits, old behaviors, old rituals. We're tempted to, because we kind of don't see the fun in what we're doing. All right? The party on down till 8 o'clock, even me get some people excited. Now your party ends at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. That's the height of it. You got to recognize you're aiming for the most powerful party on earth, the party of your life, rather than the party of your Saturday night. And the whole thing then takes us to a place of absolute responsibility. Let me expand on responsibility, because responsibility then, as we discuss, seems to be that we then end up carrying this weight on our shoulders, because I've got to take responsibility for myself, the kids, the government, my football team that loses, everyone, because I've got to tell them how to play, put it on social media, all these things, my opinions. I've got to phone the talk show on radio and tell them about life. We love doing that, give them our opinions, because how will they manage without me? And we then take on that responsibility and we put it on our shoulders. And who's the one carrying the burden? It's yourself. And how does that burden manifest? Physically, we get old, hunched, heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, cancer. Mentally, we're all cranky, irritable, frustrated, angry, shouting, anxious. Emotionally, our relationships suck because we got no time for family, because we're taking care of the work. We got no time for work because we're taking care of the family. Then we're taking care of the extended family. Then we're taking care of the extended community. So it's just on and on and on. And what all this does is create stress, creates pain, creates sorrow, and then we look for an elixir of life. Because in many ways, the opposite of responsibility is reward. In many ways or in some ways. And what did you and I do when we feel so responsible? I need to reward myself. And I'm not talking of chocolate. Alright? This is where the vices come in. This is where the mind says, oh, I did this substance the last time, now I'll do the other substance because it's not the same. And you delude yourself in your mind that this is fine. Oh, the government declared cannabis safe now, or can be sold at shopping malls, right? Therefore, it's okay until some weird doctor tells you that cannabis is not appropriate for you, Oh, you understand? So we then take on that responsibility, that burden, and we wonder, wait a minute, I can't do this. And we, human beings, we either take on too much responsibility and thereby become irresponsible by taking on reward. So we're kind of caught in a catch-22 situation. But there's something very important about responsibility which we need to recognize. And I'll say it very plainly. As much as you and I do, and we think we do, isn't it? We do things, we think things. I did it, I achieved it. I'm going to say, as much as you and I do, we did nothing. What do I mean by that? 99% of what you and I do in this every day, 10 years from now, you won't even remember what you did. We take on stuff, we work for organizations that probably won't exist in 10 years' time. In fact, all the organizations, the biggest ones in the world, weren't even around 10 years before, the biggest ones, right? And one wonders whether the ones that are currently in existence, whether they'll be around in 10 years' time, or we will see another technological revolution, as we call it. Okay? As much as the oil companies were the big technologies maybe 30, 40 years ago, it's the IT companies now which are the technology. And one wonders what will be the next brainwave of technology 10, 20 years from now. Okay? So as much as you and I do and feel we need to take responsibility, you and I do nothing. You do your best. And very importantly, you leave the rest. You do your best. Another way of putting it is you let the universe take care of the rest. You do your best, but you do not get attached to the outcomes, the consequences, the results of what you do. You do not get attached to the fruits of what you do. You do your absolute best, but you do not get attached to the fruits of your endeavor. Why we struggle with that? Because you and I have been taught from grade 1 and even earlier, there were fruits to be achieved as a result of what you do. And the fruits are usually, I'll use these words, acknowledgement, appreciation, agreement, approval, admiration, award, answer to the situation. And we live with that because it feeds the brain. It's the ego. It's the fuel for the mind. That ego just gets pumped up, pumped up, pumped up. We all do it. Your kid does something great. Wow, well done. That's the fruit of the endeavor. If we whack his brain enough times with that, he'll get so reinforced that he'll look for your affirmation and acknowledgement. Dad, see my school results. Dad. So it will always be the results-driven approval, admiration. And you and I know you've done things in life where you may have put in 10% effort, but you got 100% of the result. And there's sometimes where you put 99% of the effort, or even 100% of the effort, let's face it, but you got no result that you wanted. So is that the judge of who you are? The fact that you walked down some red carpet and you got some statuette, Or the judge of who you are is the type of character you have, the personality you are as a person. Doesn't that determine who you are? Rather than the results of the effort. Because you and I know society is very fickle. One day it holds you up in glory, all the affirmation, acknowledgement, approval. The next day you're the worst thing that happened. And in this day and age of social media, of sensationalism, one day you're king, next day you down in the gutters. All right? So be wary, and this is a very important aspect of responsibility, that you do your best, but do not get attached to the outcome of what you do. So people will accuse you of controlling them, manipulating them, conditioning them, brainwashing them, but you do your best. But that allows you to be aware, because when you're not aware, is we endeavoring towards a particular outcome or result or consequence, and that person may not be ready for it yet, or may not even want it. So you learn to go with the pace of life rather than the rhythm. You learn to go with the rhythm of life rather than the pace of life. And an expression I heard, which is very powerful, right? So I have a guru, Pramukh Swami, and he describes this statement because he takes on, in his lifetime, he received, they say, about 750,000 letters asking for advice. And it was obviously results-driven letters. We want a solution to the problem. It wasn't like, teach me how, well, there were a few, teach me how to be a better person, but most of them, challenges in your life. And at different stages, different challenges, right? And over the years, even the monks would help him, would tell you the categories of challenges, right? And his work wasn't like one area. It was psychiatry, it was business, it was psychology, it was family disputes, it was probably even political disputes, anything and everything under the sun. And they asked him, wow, how do you take responsibility for all this? And he says something fascinating. He says, as much as you and I carry the bucket of water on our heads, you know, this thing that makes the bucket makes our shoulders hunched and tired and sag and physically, mentally, emotionally. He says, I do not carry that bucket of water on my head. I've dived deep into the ocean. I'm covered by tons of water, but I'm extremely light. He does not carry it on his head. He allows it, he does his day and lets it be. In fact, he describes detachment is where at one level is where you are not attached to the outcome of what you do. In fact, they had bought some land where they were going to build a temple, and the young monks who had gone along saw that the land really needed a lot of work. Trees, hill, lots of bog and dust and mud. And they like, oh, geez, this is going to be a lot of work. There's so much stones, rocks. How are we going to clean this up? And they go back to him and they give a report. And he says something powerful. He says, there's not even an iota of dust that I carry with me. You just do what you have to do, not attached to the outcome of what you do. And that allows you to be totally free. In fact, let me bring it up because it brought up about loneliness. When you are authentic and aligned with your universe, you never will be lonely. Because you are far more powerful than looking for your small tribe that fits in with one day to the next. Because when you are authentic with the universe, it's for the rest of your lifetime, and some might argue for lifetimes. Then you actually have the universe that's facilitating what you're doing rather than you just doing it for yourself. You become a vehicle, a conduit to something more. And that way you will never feel lonely, isolated. Because you're then part of the most powerful tribe in the world, the universal tribe which supports you daily.